Most women don't realize what terrifies them most until he no longer flinches. Not when she raises her voice. Not when she withdraws affection. Not when she tests, provokes, accuses, or falls silent for days. He does not collapse. He does not chase. He does not react. In that moment, something ancient stirs in her, an instinct deeper than thought, older than language. It is not anger she feels, nor hatred. It is fear, a primal kind of fear, quiet and cold, that whispers, "I have lost my power over him," because the man who no longer reacts is no longer at war with himself. This man has stared into his own abyss. He has watched himself unravel in solitude, in silence, in the stillness of long nights, where no validation comes and no rescue arrives. He has tasted the bitterness of his own ego, chewed the dry bread of self-deception, swallowed it whole, and lived. She once thought his reactions were proof of love. The arguments, the apologies, the endless dance of rupture and repair. She confused his woundedness with depth, his fire with passion, his chaos with intensity. But no, that man was still trapped in the labyrinth of boyhood wounds and unhealed mother hunger. A man whose nervous system was wired to perform, to please, to protest in the face of disconnection. The kind of man who mistook reactivity for commitment, the kind of man she could still control. But now he has entered the sacred temple of restraint. And she cannot follow. You see, when a man finally learns to hold his pain without projecting it, when he no longer looks to her to soothe the inner storm, to make him feel seen, worthy, masculine, he becomes a mirror, a dangerous mirror, because she will see herself in him now, not her fantasy, not her control, herself. She will see her own manipulations, reflected with calm detachment. She will see her tests, disarmed by silence. She will see her drama, unmet by equal chaos. And most terrifying of all, she will see her irrelevance to his peace. This is not cruelty. This is not emotional coldness. This is the Stoic fire, refined into steel. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that is what she is now standing in front of. Strength, not muscles, not bravado, not the brittle dominance of insecure men, but true masculine sovereignty, a man who governs himself, who has walked through the forge of abandonment and did not come out seeking revenge, who has buried the boy who once begged for love and now walks with the man who honors his own soul above anyone's approval. She cannot reach him through shame anymore. She cannot reach him through guilt. She cannot reach him at all unless she meets him where he lives now, in truth, in accountability, in stillness. But most cannot. Most will not. Because his stillness forces a confrontation with the feminine shadow. The disowned manipulations, the unconscious games, the hunger for power, disguised as love. When the man no longer reacts, he removes the stage, and without that stage, her performance dissolves. So what is left? Just her. No masks, no roles to be chased or punished. Just her truth, just his truth. And truth is not always what the wounded parts of us want to see. You, listening now, what part of you still craves the chase? Still needs someone to collapse in the face of your pain just to feel seen? And what would happen if they didn't? What would you become if they didn't fall at your silence, didn't apologize for their calm, didn't tremble before your anger? Would you call it indifference? Would you call it ego? Or would you dare to name it what it truly is? Freedom? Because this man is free, not because he has stopped feeling. but because he no longer serves those feelings like a slave. He has mastered the inner citadel. He has stepped out of the psychic tug-of-war that defines so many modern relationships. The battlefield where ego fights ego, where fear hides behind passion, where love is weaponized for power. He has chosen a different path, the path of still waters, of deep roots, of unmoved presence, the path of the Stoic, not detached but unshakable, not cold but centered. She fears this man because nothing she throws can penetrate him, and for the first time, she must meet herself. What unsettles her is not his silence, but the clarity within it. Because silence from a reactive man is punishment. Silence from a sovereign man is peace. And peace, when you are used to chaos, feels like abandonment. She begins to spiral, not because he withholds love, but because he withholds dysfunction. He does not rise to the bait. He does not fall for the performance. He does not move, unless it is toward truth. In his stillness, she is no longer the center of his world. That was once intoxicating. His attention, his responses, the way he made her feel like she mattered, simply because he bled for her approval. But now, he has reclaimed that sacred energy and pointed it inward. She is no longer the sun around which he orbits. He is the axis of his own life now. That shift threatens everything she once believed about her feminine power. There is a dark truth buried beneath the surface of many relationships, the unspoken belief that a woman's emotional volatility can control a man, the belief that if she feels enough, loudly enough, painfully enough, then he must respond, that his reaction is proof of his devotion. But this man has withdrawn his currency. He no longer pays with his nervous system, no longer trades self-abandonment for temporary connection. He has learned the cost of collapsing for love, and he no longer buys it. He has become the mountain, not immovable because he is rigid, but because he is rooted. What is she to do when her storm cannot move him? When her tears do not twist him? When her silence is not met with frantic repair, but with sacred distance? She begins to feel what he once felt, the ache of being unseen, the rage of not being met, the helplessness of emotional bids falling into quiet. And there, in the reversal of polarity, she finds her own unhealed places. This is where the illusion breaks. She realizes that much of what she called love was a form of control, that the fire she stoked in him was often not warmth, but wildfire, destructive, consuming, unsustainable. He was not calm back then. He was compliant. He did not surrender out of strength, but out of fear, fear of losing her, fear of being alone, fear of feeling not enough. Now, he is alone, not lonely, but whole. He has learned to sit with the ache, to cradle his younger self, to father the parts of him that once needed her to play, mother, lover, savior. That boy is no longer in charge. The man is here now, and he is not interested in reenacting wounds as rituals of love. You who listen, what would it mean if someone no longer needed your validation to feel complete? Could you love them still? Could you respect them more? Or would you feel abandoned by their sovereignty? Because love that cannot exist without control is not love. It is survival. And the man who no longer reacts has transcended survival. He has chosen presence over panic, awareness over attachment, purpose over performance. She fears this not because he is absent, but because he is fully present. And that presence does not orbit her mood anymore. That presence is now anchored in something greater, his values, his path, his inner harmony. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. The man she once knew only knew love through conflict. Now, he knows it through freedom, and he does not confuse her suffering with responsibility. He may love her deeply, but he no longer needs to prove it through his pain. He does not need to bleed to be believed, and so she must now choose: meet him in his stillness or leave him in his peace. Many do not choose to stay, not because he is cruel, but because he is clear. And clarity terrifies the parts of us that thrive in emotional fog. Without fog, we see the truth. He is no longer playing the role we wrote for him, and that is the beginning of either real love or real endings. She begins to understand something she could not grasp before: that the man who no longer reacts is not withholding love. He is withholding participation in the unconscious dance of dysfunction. She used to know how to find him. Push this button, he shouts. Withdraw here, he pleads. Cry like this, he breaks. Her tools once worked with surgical precision because his heart was open in all the wrong places. But he has sewn those wounds closed, not with armor, but with awareness. This is not emotional unavailability. This is sacred discernment. Now, he watches, he listens, he feels, but he does not jump. Not into chaos, not into old patterns, not into the roles she crafted for him in her subconscious: the rescuer, the reactor, the redeemer of her unspoken grief. And without a role to cast him in, her own role begins to dissolve. The performance falters. There is a certain kind of woman who thrives in relationships built on emotional volatility, not because she is evil, but because she has never known true safety. To her, love has always been felt most powerfully in moments of rupture, when he yells, when he begs, when he breaks. That's when she feels real. That's when the numbness lifts. So when he responds to her chaos with peace instead of panic, with presence instead of pleading, the narrative collapses. She cannot find her footing. It feels like abandonment, but it is actually transformation, because he has evolved. He has moved from the emotional boy seeking to be chosen to the embodied man who has already chosen himself. This is the essence of Stoic strength, not to be unmoved, but to choose one's movement with intention. Not to be emotionless, but to be in dominion over emotion. The man who no longer reacts is not frozen, he is forged. This is a man who has learned to sit in the fire of his own discomfort without making it someone else's responsibility. He has held space for his inner child, his father wounds, his mother longing. He has done the brutal work of disentangling his worth from a woman's moods, and now he breathes in his own rhythm. He is not driven by fear of losing her. He is guided by the fear of losing himself again. You who are listening, can you feel the shift? Can you feel the raw power of someone who does not need to win, does not need to be right, does not need to defend or attack, but simply is? That is the grounded presence of a man who no longer reacts. And to those still clinging to control disguised as affection, it is unbearable. But beneath that fear is an invitation. The invitation to rise, to shed the illusion that love must come with chaos, to meet him in that stillness with your own, to trade manipulation for vulnerability, to speak without weaponizing, to connect without conquering. For many, this will feel like death, because the ego does not die quietly. The part of her that once danced on his triggers, celebrated his emotional volatility as proof of love, that part must die now, because he no longer plays the game. And if she wants to meet him, she must come unarmed. This is the man who no longer speaks to the mask. He speaks to the soul. And if she will not show hers, he will remain silent. Marcus Aurelius taught, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And this man has stopped arguing. He is being, unshakably, authentically. He is not trying to be loved anymore. He is trying to be aligned. That is why she fears him. Not because he is gone, but because he is finally here, fully, present, no longer negotiable. To stand in front of such a man is to be seen without distortion. No more projections. No more power games, just raw clarity. And in that mirror, she must either evolve or exit. The woman who chooses to stay must now meet him in the place beyond reaction. She must bring truth, not test. Surrender, not seduction. Depth, not drama. And for the first time, the love that could bloom here would not be forged in fire, but in stillness. But that stillness is a crucible. Because when there is no reaction, no chase, no retreat, no performance, the only thing left between two people is the truth. And truth is a mirror that does not flatter. She begins to see it now, not all at once, but in glimmers. In the space where his chaos used to erupt, she now feels her own dissonance echo. The silence is not empty, it is reflecting. And in that reflection, she sees the shadows she spent years outrunning. The little girl still trying to test her father's love through punishment. The young woman who equated tears with power. The one who thought emotional control was intimacy and performance was connection. She sees it all now, and it haunts her, not because he blames her, but because he doesn't. He does not need revenge. He does not need to prove her wrong. He simply stands, rooted in his own being, asking for nothing. And that, more than anything, forces the question, who is she when she is not being reacted to? This is the disorientation of meeting someone who has done the inner work, because it means the relationship is no longer built on the shaky ground of projection. It is built, or it crumbles, on the foundation of reality. The man who no longer reacts has seen behind the veil. He has faced the truth of how his longing was once weaponized against him. He has seen how his emotional responsiveness became a lever others pulled to soothe their own chaos. He now sees manipulation not as malice, but as trauma, undeclared and unhealed. And so he has chosen the most radical path: to stop being a character in anyone else's story, to be the author of his own. This is why his presence feels so different now. It is no longer entangled, no longer fused with need, with hope, with fear of rejection. He loves, but he does not cling. He feels, but he does not flinch. He cares, but he does not contort. He will not twist himself into knots to keep someone close. He will not negotiate with dysfunction, even if it wears the face of beauty or the voice of longing. You, hearing this, have you ever known such a man? Have you ever become such a man? Not one who turns to stone, but one who holds the full spectrum of emotion without letting it rule his life. Not one who walks away to punish, but one who walks away to preserve peace. Not one who denies love, but one who refuses to love in ways that betray himself. This is not emotional distance. It is emotional maturity. This is not passive aggression. It is sovereign containment. This is not apathy. It is self-respect. And that, above all, is what she now feels radiating from him. Not rejection, not cruelty, but a calm, fierce self-respect that cannot be seduced, provoked, or broken. It is the scent of a man who no longer leaks energy through his wounds, a man who has integrated his shadow, who has sat with his shame and metabolized it. A man who has grieved without spectacle, healed without applause, and returned without seeking reward. She looks at him and knows, if she cannot meet him here, he will not follow her into old stories. And she finally understands. This is not the man who once needed her to choose him. This is the man who now chooses himself. He is no longer bound by the need to be understood, validated, or saved. He is no longer triggered by her disapproval or silence. He does not tremble in the face of her moods. He does not chase closure. He creates it within. This kind of man changes everything because he forces a reckoning, not with him, but with oneself. If she continues to engage from her wound, her script will fail. If she plays the games, there will be no audience. If she cries for attention instead of connection, there will be no response. And so, for the first time, she must make a decision, not from control, but from courage. To step out of the drama and into the divine, to meet him not as a manipulator or a performer or a wounded girl, but as a woman, fully formed, raw, true, and awake. Because the man who no longer reacts, no longer plays, she begins to feel the weight of it, not his absence, but his presence. The kind of presence that does not bend under pressure, does not fracture under emotional weight. A presence like granite, ancient, grounded, and impervious to performance. There is something terrifyingly beautiful about being seen without being worshipped, without being indulged, without being feared. He does not idolize her. He does not place her on a pedestal to later tear her down. He sees her for what she is, both shadow and light. And he remains unmoved, not because he does not care, but because he has learned to love without losing himself. She is used to power, but not to reverence. She is used to being chased, not being challenged. She is used to men unraveling at her feet, shaken by her absence, ignited by her silence, intoxicated by her rage. But he no longer drinks from that cup. He has found a deeper intoxication, stillness. Not the stillness of indifference, but the stillness of a man who has gone inward and found peace. Of a man who no longer relies on outer chaos to distract from inner wounds. Of a man who can hear her scream and not need to silence her, because her scream is no longer a threat to his foundation. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This man guards his thoughts as a sacred realm. He no longer allows others to build temples or traps within them. He has become sovereign territory. This is not detachment born from fear of pain. It is detachment born from communion with pain. He has felt everything she ever tried to evoke in him. The desperation, the desire, the ache of being misunderstood, the craving to be enough. He has sat with every emotion she used to weaponize, and now they no longer control him. She cannot seduce what no longer seeks escape. It is in this realization that she starts to grieve, not for him, but for the story, the one where she held the strings, the one where his love was measured by his reactions, the one where his suffering was proof of his depth. That story has ended. In its place is a new myth, one where the masculine no longer breaks for the feminine to feel whole. One where he does not descend into the emotional underworld at her command, but walks beside her only if she rises to meet him. This grief is holy. It is the beginning of her own awakening. Because now, she sees him, not just as a man who no longer reacts, but as a man who no longer submits to false intimacy. A man who no longer surrenders his essence in order to belong. A man who finally belongs to himself. And that is the deepest fear of all. Not that he is gone, but that he no longer needs to come back. You who are hearing this, what would it mean to be so full within yourself that love is an offering, not a need? To respond without reacting, to walk away without punishing, to love without losing yourself in someone else's storm. Can you become the one who no longer reacts? Can you make peace with being misunderstood? Can you let go of being chosen and instead choose presence? Because that is the initiation. When a man passes through the fire and returns with nothing to prove, the world changes, his relationships change. His life is no longer governed by impulse, but by inner law. He becomes a quiet revolution, not loud, not angry, just steady. The women who once knew how to break him now find themselves broken by his integrity, not because he is cruel, but because he no longer dances with projections. He no longer flinches at accusation. He no longer interprets conflict as intimacy. He no longer leaks. He no longer bleeds on hands that do not know how to hold. He no longer reacts. This kind of man is rare. Not because men cannot become him, but because few are willing to walk through the fire and not emerge looking for applause. He does not perform healing, he embodies it. And so now, she must decide to resist this evolution or rise with it, to cling to her scripts or burn them. Because he is no longer in the old play, he has exited the stage and built a temple. There is a sacred loneliness that arrives when the game ends, when the strategies dissolve, when the person in front of you no longer plays the role you assigned them. It is not the loneliness of abandonment. It is the loneliness of truth. She feels it now, sharp and echoing, a cavern within her that used to be filled with his reactions, his energy, his need, and now, emptiness. Not because he has turned cold, but because he has turned inward. His warmth still exists, but it is no longer for purchase. It is sacred, not for barter. And for the first time, she cannot reach him through emotion alone. If she wants access to this man, she must bring something else. Not performance, not provocation, but presence. And presence, for the one who has always wielded emotionality as power, is terrifying. Because presence requires vulnerability. Not the kind that lures and manipulates, but the kind that lays down all weapons. The kind that says, "Here I am." No masks. No roles, just truth. He has become a compass now, not a map. He does not tell others where to go, but he moves in integrity. And if she is to join him, it must be because her direction aligns, not because he waits or pleads. He is done waiting, not out of resentment, but out of reverence for his own time, his own journey. She once mistook urgency for love, the panic in his voice, the shaking in his hands, the way he collapsed after conflict and crawled back with apologies. She called that devotion, but it was not. It was trauma. It was codependency. It was fear dressed in roses. Now, there is no panic, no collapse, no frantic repair, only quiet, only space, only a man who will not beg to be understood anymore. And in that, her old power shrivels. This is the rebirth of polarity, not the distorted version that thrives on domination and submission, but the true dance of masculine and feminine, when both have done the inner work, when neither needs the other to bleed in order to feel alive. This man has done his, and now he stands as the gatekeeper of his peace. He no longer invites people in based on their beauty, their charm, or their wounded longing. He does not open to chaos in hopes of rescuing it. He opens only to those who bring calm, to match his own. Not perfection, but presence. The battlefield is closed. The healer in him is retired. Now, he is simply a man, and that is what makes him so dangerous to the old world. To women still addicted to being saved, he is a threat. To those still fueled by control, he is a mirror they cannot distort. To anyone who demands his self-abandonment as proof of love, he is a heretic. He is the man who says no, not with bitterness, but with clarity. No, I will not be shamed into submission. No, I will not give my soul in exchange for attention. No, I will not react to your pain in the ways that harm us both. And yet, his love remains. Fierce, deep, loyal, but no longer leaking. No longer poured into broken vessels. No longer given to those who make him prove it through self-destruction. You who are listening, can you feel it? The weight of becoming someone who does not react to the world's madness because you've made peace with your own? That is the Stoic path. That is the warrior's heart, not the one who fights everything outside, but the one who conquers within. The woman who stands before him now has two choices: revert to the old games or awaken to a new way of being. She can test him, but he will not flinch. She can tempt him, but he will not chase. She can try to confuse him, but he lives in clarity now. And so, her only real path forward is to evolve. This is the quiet alchemy his presence demands. Not submission, not performance, but evolution. If she cannot meet him with truth, he will not meet her with time, because he knows now, love is not real if it asks you to abandon yourself. So she stands there, on the edge of something sacred, not because he's leaving, but because he's standing still and no longer following. This is how he loves now, without bargaining, without bleeding, without reacting. There is a kind of love that does not tremble. It does not rush in to soothe what was never wounded in truth. It does not collapse under the weight of someone else's storm. It simply stands, rooted, quiet, present. That is the love he now offers. Not the reactive love of a boy desperate to be seen, but the sovereign love of a man who has already seen himself. And that, in its stillness, is more powerful than all the chaos in the world. She sees now that every game she played was a cry. Prove you won't leave. Prove I matter. Prove I'm safe. But the man who no longer reacts has no need to prove anything. He has become safety for himself, and so he offers a new kind of love. I am here, but I will not abandon myself to hold you. It is a love that invites, but never pleads. A love that welcomes, but does not beg. A love that says, if you cannot meet me in wholeness, I would rather walk alone in peace. This love has no hooks, no manipulation, no fear beneath the flowers. It is clean, it is honest, and that is why so many find it hard to hold. Because love like this forces one to become whole or to flee. She now stands before a different man entirely. Gone is the one who flinched at silence. Gone is the one who danced for scraps of affection. Gone is the one who twisted himself into 1,000 shapes just to feel worthy. In his place is something deeper. Still, grounded, free, not from her, but from the need to be needed. He no longer rises and falls with her moods, no longer interprets conflict as passion, no longer sees drama as connection. He does not respond to chaos with chaos. He responds with space. And if space is filled with truth, he steps forward. If space is filled with manipulation, he stays rooted where he is, because he knows now his peace is not a prize to be bargained with. It is the home he built after the war inside him ended. He has walked through the fires of abandonment, through the guilt of not saving her, through the ache of no longer being the one who breaks at her feet. He has emerged burned, but clear. And now, he does not run from the feminine. He simply refuses to worship her shadow. For the woman willing to meet him, not to control, but to co-create, his presence is a gift. For the woman still stuck in the old ways, his presence is unbearable. Because it does not echo back her pain, it asks her to transform it. She feared him because she could not move him. And yet, now she sees. That is his greatest strength. Not to be moved by fear, but only by truth. Marcus Aurelius whispered to eternity, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." His soul is now dyed with stillness, with clarity, with depth. And in that depth, there is no more room for performance. She must ask herself now, do I rise or do I retreat? Do I meet him in my wholeness, or do I return to what once gave me power, but never gave me peace? Because he will not react. He will not chase. He will not contort himself into her projections. He will only open to truth. He is the man who no longer needs to be chosen to know his worth. The man who would rather walk alone in integrity than walk beside someone in illusion. The man who makes peace more attractive than pain. She feared the death of control. But what stands before her now is not loss. It is invitation. To love without needing to conquer. To feel without needing to provoke. To connect without needing to consume. This is the threshold. This is the mirror. This is the fire. The man who no longer reacts has not closed his heart. He has refined it. And only those who bring truth, not performance, presence, not panic, depth, not demand, may enter.